Welcome to Crimepedia. I'm your host this week. My name is Cherry, and my co-host is the best co-host in the business, of course. It's the lovely Morgan.
How are you doing, Donut?
I'm good, thank you. We just had a really fun Crimepedia extra episode. It was really fun. We basically redesigned the British and American police.
Uniforms. Yeah,
I really
really
enjoyed it. It was fun. If the uniforms were left to us, I think we just should put some pictures on our socials just for fun of our perfect uniform choices. There's pink and there's glitter and cowboy hats. And that's not all me. It was good.
It was good.
It was really good.
If you aren't a part of our Patreon and you want to listen to our Crimepedia extra episodes, which I think this one was like almost a half an hour. So you get like a half an hour of extra content, which is
rubbish mostly.
Mostly rubbish. You can do so by joining our Patreon, which is you can join for as little as $2 a month.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Which is cheaper than £2 English. Hey.
Yeah.
Bargain.
$24 a year? Come on.
Yeah, it's great. You can do it. And you also get lots of exclusive stuff that nobody else gets, which is nice. We do lots of, hopefully we should be doing another live soon, which will be fun. I think we've decided we're going to watch a film, haven't we? Demolition Man, I think we were thinking about watching and doing a little chat along with that, which will be really fun. Yeah, I love
Do we do Demolition Man or do we do Judge Dredd?
No, Demolition Man, because I think we'd have so much fun with that one.
Oh, okay.
I think we would. So we also had some fun this week because we had a CrimeCon chat with the rest of Podcast Row.
Oh, we did.
It was so much fun. So we got to meet who's going to be on Podcast Row this year at CrimeCon UK in September. And oh my, if you've got tickets, you are in for a treat. There is some fun stuff that's going to be happening there. They've got so many guests, like so many amazing guests that you can see. All the great podcasters are there. So obviously including us, they're all there. And you can come and meet all the different podcasts, the British ones, American ones. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, and I think it was good for me because, to be honest, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the UK podcasters or podcast shows.
Yeah.
So it was nice for me to like kind of see who's coming and then kind of getting, learning a little bit of who they are, or at least what they look like and what they sound like.
Yeah. Yeah, we've managed to catch up with a few, which has been really nice. And we've had a couple reach out to us, which is good. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
We did.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
We definitely did. And there's a lot of exciting stuff that they're going to be doing for CrimeCon. Some stuff that we're not allowed to even talk about yet.
No, that's right. Yeah. There's some really good stuff.
Exciting.
Yeah.
We are scheduled.
I know.
We are scheduled to do our live show, so a live recording, which is going to be quite intimate, right?
I was just about to say that. Yeah, it's quite an intimate.
18 people.
So 18
it's going to be
seats.
Us and 18 of our friends. So if you are going, you got to definitely make sure that you get a seat for that. Yeah. And if you haven't yet bought your tickets and you want to see us record live, you should definitely do that now.
Yeah, and you can use our code Crimepedia at checkout, and that will give you 10% off of your ticket price. And the tickets are COVID secure, so if for any reason that we have to delay or cancel, or for any reason, you will be reimbursed or your tickets will be moved. So you don't have to worry if you think you won't be able to go, because you will be eventually when it's all back to normal. So, but fingers crossed, things are going ahead as we know at the moment, and hopefully we should be good to go.
Absolutely. And Jerry, I want to ask you, I don't know if we've talked about it on the show, but you are a part of a group now, right? Are you a board member of a group?
Yeah. So I'm a board member of a charity called All the Lost Girls, and it was set up by a lady called LaDonna Humphrey, who we had actually on our show. You may remember we did the case of Melissa Witt. So we did Who Killed Missy Witt, and she is very, very involved in Melissa Witt's case. And she has set up this amazing charity that basically it's for people that are killed in a similar way to Melissa Witt. So it's for cases that are similar to hers, and it's to help. So basically, once a year, we will choose a case that's given to us by people, and we will then put everything we have into trying to help solve that case. So, yeah, we've just selected this year's case, and hopefully by October, we should start with the investigations for this year's case. So, it's really exciting.
That is really exciting.
Yeah, really exciting. It's nice to be asked
and
to do
there
that.
was a new call for information
Yeah.
on Melissa Witt's case
Yes.
this past week.
There was, that's
where
right.
they're looking for, if I'm not mistaken, they're looking for information on any music festivals
That's right.
that occurred in 1994
Yeah.
in in Arkansas, really.
So we've got
I think they're looking at Fort Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alma, Mulberry, Ozark, Russellville, Little Rock, Fayetteville, and Springdale.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So music festivals that occurred in 1994 in those locations.
Mm-hmm. And if you've got any information, if you were at any of those, you can just email whokilledmissywitt@gmail.com. Everything's kept confidential, but obviously it will really help, hopefully, in this case. It might be something really you think significant, but it could help them. So, yeah, I did share that on our social media. So if you're not sure of the names, then just check out my Instagram and you'll find a list of them on there. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
And I'll be honest, I started looking into that and seeing what I could find. I did, yeah.
Oh.
I did.
Hopefully we'll find some stuff.
I'm curious why music festivals. Like what do they know?
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know what they know. So.
No, we don't know what they know just yet. They're not allowed to talk about it just yet, but there's something. So
that's very interesting.
It'll be nice to do a Missy Witt update to tell you who actually killed her and to file that one in the solved filing cabinet.
We need a new solved one.
We do.
We've done pretty good.
I know, 2 so far. So, and we're very close on the Stuart Lubbock case. So 3 possibly. Mm-hmm. Fingers crossed.
And then hopefully there's something with Missy Witt. And then we still have that Kimberly
Rayner, and also hopefully the introduction of the offer of some DNA helping in the Celia Duquette case. Then you never know, that could be another one. And let's just hope we can give some families some answers. Good. Yeah, it will be really good, really, really good.
That'd be so good. This week's case is not necessarily one that we need more information on necessarily.
No,
there's a resolution, but I think the resolution is kind of questionable to some.
I wanted to do something a bit different this week because we have done a lot of missing people. Most of our cases are cold cases that we do from a long time ago. This one was a listener suggestion. So thank you very much to Lindsay Shaw, who suggested this week's one. She emailed me and said, I'd love to know what you guys think of it. I'd love to see what Morgan's take is on it as well. And she said, we're her favourite podcast. That was really nice. So that was lovely. Aww. So I thought, yeah, okay, well, I'll do this one. I know the case, not inside out, but oh my goodness, there is so much information on this case to get through.
Uh-huh. I did not know about this case.
No.
But I do now.
You do now.
We do now. And we've talked about it a little bit, so it's going to be very interesting to see how our views on this case.
Yes, I'm really interested to see what you think.
All right, so how about we jump right into this then?
Okay, let's go. In August 1985, the bodies of 2 women, a man and 2 small children were found at Whitehouse Farm in Tolleshunt D'Arcy in Essex, England. They had all been shot at close range. Police believed it to be a family tragedy, a murder-suicide. But the only surviving member of the family, Jeremy Bamber, was arrested and convicted of the murders. This is Crimepedia, and this is Jeremy Bamber, guilty or not. Okay, Morgan, so if you're a British person, you've probably heard of the name Jeremy Bamber. And if you've not heard of him, then you've heard of murders that occurred at Whitehouse Farm in Essex. There is so much information about this case on the internet, in books, in podcasts, that you are overwhelmed with different points of view and different information. So I haven't covering this case because Lindsay, like we said earlier, Lindsay Shaw asked us to, because she's interested to see what we think. So what I've decided to do with this one is to present the actual case to you of what happened, then cover the prosecution and then what the defense say. And then I think you can make your own mind up what you think happened. I want to make it quite clear, though, this week's episode, I've pulled information that I think was important to the case. And so if I've missed anything, it's purely my mistake. And there's probably loads that I haven't included because I've been through, I'll let you in on this one. I've currently got 13 pages of notes on this. And I've already discounted and cut out quite a lot that I thought was that was interesting on this. So I've tried to sort of collate everything I could together, but obviously there's going to be things that I've missed, and there's going to be things that people are going to go, well, why didn't you mention this? But I'm trying to get everything I can into you can't get everything into, a podcast. I mean, there's podcasts that have done 28 episodes on this case. And so we're trying to do this in one, possibly two.
Yeah. So I didn't know about this case. Like I said, didn't know about this case. Never heard of it until you told me about it. You had me watch something, which I watched.
Yeah.
So I already have a thought or what my opinion is. Okay. But what I'm going to do for this, I'm going to clear my mind.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to clear my mind. I'm going to listen to you share the story.
Yeah. And then make your mind up.
And then I'm going to make my mind up. So you
I'm
have to sell me on this case.
Okay, and what I'm going to try and do, I've got my own opinions on it. I'm going to try not to influence you the way I think, because I want to see what you do straight down the middle. So I'm not going to give you what I think first. Okay, so I'm going to try and be really down the middle with this. So Jeremy Bamber has already been convicted. We know that. He's currently in prison. However, he has always denied that he killed his family, and he's been campaigning tirelessly to get himself a new trial whenever he can. And so when Lindsay said about this one, I thought, oh yeah, okay, I've seen the TV show. I've listened to other podcasts about it. I'll listen to it. I listened to a few more, and then I will go and make my mind up. So what we're going to do is start with the people that's involved in the crime itself, because I think it's quite important to explain to you about the people involved in this case. So on the 6th of August, 1985, Neville, who's actually called Ralph, but is known as Neville, and his wife, June Bamber, were at their Georgian home called Whitehouse Farm near Tolleshunt D'Arcy in Essex in England. Now, they had married and moved to the farm in 1949. It belonged to June's father and was set around 300 acres of farmland. They were financially secure, quite happy. They had the farmhouse, they had the 300 acres, they had a property in London. They also owned a caravan site. So they made, money through that. They were at home that day with their adopted daughter Sheila and her 6-year-old twins Daniel and Nicholas. Now, Neville was a former RAF pilot, and he was also a magistrate with the Witham Magistrates Court. He was I think he was 6'4" and in good physical health. So quite a big man, quite a strong man. He's a farmer, obviously, so he's quite strong. And at the time of his death was 61. So not old. He's got, decent age, I'd say. He and June were unable to have children. So they adopted Sheila and they also adopted Jeremy as babies. Their full names are Sheila Caffell and Jeremy Bamber. They're not related. So they've adopted both the children as babies, not related to each other. So June was 61 when she died also. So they're both 61. She had suffered from depression previously and had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital in the 50s, including after Sheila's adoption. She was given electroshock therapy. Okay. At least 6 times. Now, I looked up electroshock therapy because, you know what it is, but I wondered why they do it. So it's actually called electroconvulsive therapy, which is shortened down to ECT. And typically what they do is they put 70 to 120 volts applied externally to your head. Okay. Now, this is either from your temple to temple, which is called bilateral ECT, or from the front to the back of the head, which is called unilateral ECT. Okay. And this current is passed directly through the brain. And it's usually done for between 100 milliseconds and 6 seconds. Okay. Now, the ECT procedure was first made in 1938 by a guy called Ugo Saletti, an Italian psychiatrist. And this replaced less safe stuff because there was a lot of biological stuff that they used to treat depression and stuff like that. And this ECT is used as a safe intervention for major depressive disorders, mania. So it's like a serious, it's only used for like quite serious things, and she'd had it at least 6 times. She was quite a religious lady, very deeply religious. She and Neville had both given Jeremy and Sheila a private education, and June, she was known to push her religious views on the two of them and trying to get them to adopt her view and live within her views. Now, June and Sheila weren't particularly close. Sheila felt that June disapproved of her and her way of life and her way of thinking. She wasn't, she just basically felt like her mum didn't approve of her. Jeremy and June also had a bit of a tumultuous relationship. And at one point, he actually stopped talking to her completely. Now, Sheila Caffel, sometimes known as Bamber to her friends, was 28 when she died. She was the illegitimate child of the daughter of the Archbishop of Canterbury, and she was put up for adoption 2 weeks after she was born and adopted by the Bambers.
Wait. The illegitimate daughter of the Archbishop of Canterbury. That's a big position, right?
He's his grandchild. So his daughter was pregnant, and he, they sort of, obviously the Archbishop of Canterbury is very religious, and his 17-year-old daughter became pregnant and had to be adopted. So she was 2 weeks old, put up for adoption, and was adopted by the Bambers. Now, when Sheila was 17, she found out she was pregnant herself. So she was pregnant young as well. And the father was a guy called Colin Caffel. Now, the Bambers also arranged an abortion for her. So she was given up for adoption herself, and then an abortion was arranged for 17-year-old Sheila. Now, shortly after that summer, June caught Sheila and Colin sunbathing naked in a field. Which, obviously, for somebody who's deeply religious, that's not a good thing. And their relationship began to suffer because of this.
Okay, I don't want to get into too much into this, but as someone that's religious, would they be okay with an abortion?
I know. I did originally think that, because I would have thought that would be a bad thing, because they wouldn't believe in that. But I guess it depends on which religion you are. I know that I'm not very good with the religions, but Catholic, I think, are very, very would be against that.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure about the Christian.
What was June?
I don't know.
Christian?
I don't know. I'm guessing. They just said that, in everything I could find, she was just deeply religious.
Okay.
But so I would have thought that an abortion would have been, a no-no, but that's what happened. Yeah. That's what they did.
Yeah, because I would think if bathing nude out in the field is a no-no, then abortion would be a no-no. But I mean, once again, I don't want to get into this. I don't want to get, So.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. So June often referred to Sheila as the devil's child.
That's lovely.
Yeah, that's nice. Now, she became pregnant again and then married Colin at Chelmsford Register Office. So they were still together. They got married in 1977, but unfortunately she miscarried the baby at 6 months into the pregnancy. That's really awful, isn't it? Neville and June bought her a flat in Hampstead to help her recuperate. And Sheila then suffered another miscarriage after that. So she's, it's not great. But, however, in June 1979, she gave birth to Nicholas and Daniel. And so it was all good until she found out that Colin had been having an affair, and he left her 5 months after the boys were born. I know. 5 months after the babies are born, and he's gone.
That's a lot. Yeah. That is a lot.
Twin babies. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crap, isn't it? But unfortunately, so that's what happened with them. Now, Sheila's mental health suffered because of this. She had episodes. Now, this is something I read in a lot of different things about her. She had episodes of banging her head against walls.
Ooh, okay.
So her mental health really started to suffer. And I would think, obviously, all these miscarriages probably they will have a mental effect on her, an effect on her mental health. She was referred to a guy called Hugh Ferguson, who treated June for depression. And he said that Sheila was in an agitated state, showing signs of paranoia and psychosis. So she was admitted to St Andrew's Hospital, which is a private psychiatric facility, where he diagnosed her as having schizoaffective disorder.
Okay.
Now, she was discharged in September 1983, and he continued to see her as an outpatient. He then concluded that his first diagnosis had been a mistake, and that now he believes she was suffering from schizophrenia.
Ooh, okay. That's... how do we get there? That's what I'm confused about. Because it didn't seem... Well, I mean, up to this point, it doesn't seem like there was anything that you had said that would indicate that Sheila
I
In
think it
fact,
had started. I think it had started decline. Her mental health had started declining throughout all of these miscarriages, and I think by the time that he
yeah. Oh,
got to
yeah.
see her, obviously she had got to the point where he believed she was schizophrenic.
But does stress and stuff lead to schizophrenia?
I'm not sure. I get. Well, it could do. I guess if you have a big enough of a shock, and you have a big enough of trauma, I guess.
I suppose.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, he
I
I would
don't.
I would say
Yeah.
he's a doctor, but it's like
Mm.
that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Okay.
Well, he began treating her with something called trifluoropazine. Trifluoropazine? Yeah, I think that's how you say it.
Okay.
So this is an antipsychotic drug, and this would, this would help with her paranoid delusions and her schizophrenia. He also
Okay.
said Sheila believed that the devil had given her the power to project evil onto others, and that she could make her
Holy.
sons have sex and cause violence with her.
What?
She called them the devil's children, which you remember is a
Okay.
phrase that June used when she was
Yeah.
describing Sheila. Now, she spoke about suicide, although Ferguson didn't regard her as a suicide risk. She talked about suicide, but he didn't regard her as having, being suicidal. She was readmitted to St
Yeah.
Andrews in March 1985, which is 5 months before the murders took place, after a psychotic episode. Now, she believed that she was in direct communication with God and that certain people, including her boyfriend, were trying to kill her.
Oh, okay.
Now, she was discharged.
Okay.
She was discharged 4 weeks later, and as an outpatient, was receiving a monthly injection of a drug called haloperidol. Now, this is an antipsychotic drug, but it has a sedative effect. So
Okay.
it would then make her reaction slower. It would make her tired and more sleepy. And most of the time, after she had been prescribed this drug once a month, the twins lived most or all of the time with their dad, Colin.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So it seems that Sheila is going through an episode at the moment, obviously a mental health episode. She's not in a great place at the moment. So let's talk a bit about Jeremy, okay? Jeremy was born in
Okay.
1961. He was born to a student midwife who had an affair with a married army sergeant. She gave
Okay.
Jeremy to the Church of England Children's Society when he was 6 weeks old. Now, his biological parents actually got married. So his mum and
Oh.
the married army sergeant actually got married later and had more children together.
Oh.
Mm.
That would be traumatic if you learn about that.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? That you got put up for adoption, but actually they got married and had more
Yeah.
children and didn't get you back.
Wow. Okay.
I was really shocked when I read that, and I thought, oh, that poor guy. So yeah, he was sent to the Church of England Children's Society. He was 6 weeks old, and Neville and June adopted him when he was 6 months old. So he was in there for a while, and they got him when he was 6 months old. Jeremy wasn't very good, particularly at school. He didn't really enjoy school life, and he joined the cadet force when he was 9, which was whilst he was at a school called Gresham's Boarding School. Now, this is a bit strange because there are rumours there that whilst he was at Gresham's Boarding School, he suffered a sexual assault. There's not very much information about this, but it is just rumoured that he suffered a sexual assault, and it's never actually officially been confirmed by anybody. But it's on every single piece of information when you look up Jeremy's child life. That's there. Now, he attended a sixth form college in Colchester, and Neville paid for him to take a trip to Australia and New Zealand, where he did a scuba diving course. That's quite cool.
Okay.
But whilst in New Zealand, allegedly, Jeremy broke into a jeweller's and stole 2 expensive watches and boasted that he was involved in smuggling heroin.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
I know. So one of his cousins alleged that he had left New Zealand quickly because his friends were involved in an armed robbery. And he came back to England, worked in a few restaurants and bars, but then ultimately went back to work on the family farm. But he resented being back in the family fold because, well, I think he had a pretty good deal, to be honest. Basically, he earned £170 a week, right? He'd been given a car, so he had a car for free. He had a cottage to live in, which Neville gave him, rent-free.
Yeah.
So he lived rent-free. So basically just had £170 cash a week to do what he wanted. We're talking back in 1985, so that's not really bad, really, for somebody of his age. Now, the cottage was about I think it's between 3 and 3.5 miles from Whitehouse Farm. So it's a 5-minute car drive or about 15 minutes on bicycle. Now, because he obviously had his car for free, and Neville also gave him 8% of the family company, which was the campsite that I told you about, the camp and caravan site.
Yeah.
So he had 8% of that as well. So I think he had a pretty good deal.
Yeah. And I mean, he can't be that upset that he's back in, working the family farm because it was his choices that led him back there.
Yeah, because he couldn't behave himself in New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a bit about the people that are involved in this. I didn't go really into Daniel and Nicholas because they're 6-year-old kids, and you know who their mum and dad are. There's no need to go into any of that. So if we get to the murders themselves, I can explain what happened.
Let me ask you a quick question that was about the family in general.
Yeah.
So they own this farm, they own a little caravan park.
Yeah.
Are they well off?
Yes.
Financially?
Yes.
Okay, so they are. Okay.
Yeah. They're very comfortable financially. They've got a house in London that they own. They've got the big farmhouse. They've got 300 acres. They've got the caravan site. They've got the cottage down the road. So their family basically did rapeseed oil. Like, the farm was a rapeseed farm and stuff like that. So they were quite busy and they were doing really well.
Okay.
And the farm was given to them by June's dad. So June's dad actually passed the farm to them when they got married, and they moved onto the farm and carried it on.
So they'd be well off. They'd be very comfortable at this point.
Very comfortable, yeah. So on the 7th of August 1985 at approximately 8 o'clock, Jeremy left the farm to go up to the farmhouse. Now, Sheila, June and Neville were sat around the table eating and discussing the possibility of Sheila's 2 boys going into temporary foster care. She was having a bit of a hard time. Like I said to you, before the murders, she had been diagnosed as schizophrenic, and they were looking at having her into temporary foster care for a while she sorted herself out.
But, okay, why would they do that when Colin was responsible for the children at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
Could they do that? They couldn't just say, if they're living with Colin, and if Colin's like a parent, then how can they?
I think, in some cases, kids can be placed into foster care and still see their parents. It's not that they're just sent into foster care and that's it. They can still be looked after by somebody else while their parents sort them out. They had actually been into foster care before, but they had been in London rather than near Whitehouse Farm. And Sheila didn't have a problem with it before when they'd been looked after temporarily by somebody else.
Okay.
So she didn't seem to be too bothered about that.
Now, did Colin actually have custody of the children, or were they just happening to stay with him?
I think they stayed
Sheila
with
had custody.
Yeah, I think Sheila had custody and they just stayed with him now and then.
Okay.
So it didn't appear that Sheila had a problem with the boys going into temporary foster care. It was only a temporary thing, and it was probably be during the day. So really, I don't think it's really foster care. It's more like daycare by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
But there are difference in opinions on this conversation. The only person that obviously knows about this conversation that we can get the answers from is Jeremy. So there have been people that have said that this didn't even take place whatsoever. So this is coming directly from Jeremy, that's what they were talking about when he went back to the farm.
Okay.
All right. So now between 8:45 and 9, he had been back to the farmhouse quite a few times, and he said that the conversation was still ongoing about the boys. So then approximately 9 p.m, he took a rifle out from its place in the scullery because he'd seen some rabbits close to the house and was going to shoot them. And it was a .22 rifle, but by the time he got back outside, the rabbits had gone. And so he was like mumbling to himself about having to get rid of rabbits and all that kind of thing. And he put the rifle back on the kitchen table.
Okay. So on the kitchen table.
On the kitchen table. So alongside it on the kitchen table, he left a full magazine and a box of ammunition. So he just basically, because obviously he was going to load the gun, sort it all out, go and shoot them, and then come back in again, but they weren't there. So he just came back in and put everything back on the table.
Is that where he got it from?
He got it from the scullery. So he got it from the scullery just off of the kitchen.
So instead of putting it back in the scullery, he leaves it on the kitchen table.
Yeah, he just chucked it back on the kitchen table.
Okay.
So at this time, he had obviously put it on the kitchen table and then left. At this time, it did not have a silencer. It didn't have a telescopic sight attached to it. It was just a bog standard rifle. Okay. Jeremy did say that there was a telescopic sight and a silencer on the rifle in late July because another one of the family members had said that they had seen it on there, But Jeremy said that his father must have taken it off because there wasn't one on there when he used it that day. Now, Neville kept several guns at the farm. Obviously, I mean, it's a farm, so usually farmers have got guns on the farm. He was reported to be very, very careful with them, very diligent gun owner. He cleaned them every time he used them. He secured them back into... I mean, in England, we have to, if you've got firearms on the property, they have to be kept in a locked cabinet. I think it's a steel cabinet, or it has to be kept in a certain place. It has to be locked up, and you have to have a license for it.
Not a kitchen table.
Not a kitchen table.
Okay.
Now, the rifle itself was bought by Neville. It was a .22 Anschutz model. It was a 5.25 semi-automatic rifle. And on the 30th of November, 1984, which is when he bought it, he bought a Parker Hale silencer, a telescopic sight, and 500 rounds of ammunition, which were actually used in cartridges. And they were loaded into a magazine, and the magazine held 10 cartridges at a time.
Okay.
10.
Okay.
10 cartridges at a time. Now, a farm worker heard Jeremy leave at around 9:30. He drove his silver Astra back to the cottage in Goldhanger, and Barbara Wilson, who is the farm's secretary, phoned Neville at home around that time and was left with the impression that she had interrupted an argument. She said Neville was really short with her on the phone and seemed to hung up in irritation, which was really not like him. She said he was a really placid, happy, nice man. Now, June's sister, a lady called Pamela Boutflaw, she telephoned at around 10 p.m. She spoke to Sheila, who she said was quiet and zombie-like. Well, obviously, we know that Sheila is taking medication that makes her sleepy and that, subdues her a little bit. So, okay, that's not out of the way. She then spoke to June, who said she seemed absolutely normal. She said that Neville was out harvesting the last round of the rapeseed, and June was talking about that she was worried that Sheila had been acting really strangely that day. Remember, that comes from Pamela, June's sister. Pamela Boutflaw, okay? June's sister. So approximately 10 p.m., Jeremy called his girlfriend, Julie. Now, this is a lady called Julie Mugford. She is a big part of this case. He called her about 10 p.m. and she said later on to the police that she had been drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana at the time of this phone call. It was a very quick call, she said, because Jeremy said that she, was a bit nonplussed about stuff. And so he was off to watch TV before going to bed, which he did at about 11 p.m. Now, around 3:15 a.m., Jeremy was woken up by a telephone call. Now, this was his father who said, this is Neville, who said, "Can you come over quickly? Sheila's gone crazy and she's got the gun." And then the line went dead. Now, I've read a couple of different reports of this. One says that the line was quiet, but he could hear stuff going on in the background. Nothing of any description, but the line was still connected to his phone. And then other reports I've read say that the line just went completely dead and cut off, like he'd hung up. Now, Jeremy tried to call his father back immediately, but it was engaged. Now, there is a difference between an engaged tone and a off-the-hook tone, apparently. I didn't know that, but apparently there is a difference.
Okay.
So if somebody's just taken the phone off the hook and is not using it, apparently the tone that you hear will be different to if the person is actually on the phone on another call. And I didn't know that, but apparently in the beeps, there is a difference in the two sets of beeps. I might have to try that one myself to find out whether that is actually the case. I don't know. When you're over there, if somebody's got an engaged tone, if you phone somebody and it's engaged, what happens? I'm talking landline, not mobile.
So if it's in use?
Yeah, if they're on the phone.
It would be now I got to remember because I haven't heard one in a while. But no, it was like, it's just a series of beep, 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 like that.
Yeah, okay, same as us. So
Yeah.
And apparently, like I said, I didn't realise, apparently if you've got an engaged tone, it's very different to the tone is if the phone's off the hook and no one's talking. So Jeremy then was trying to call his dad, but every time it was engaged. Now, a guy called PC West at Chelmsford Police Station called a civilian phone operator called Malcolm Bonnet on an internal police line to relay some information saying that he had just had a call from Neville Bamber at 3:26 a.m. saying that his daughter had gone berserk and had hold of one of his guns. Now, I've actually read the police report on this and he actually writes, "Daughter gone berserk." on the actual police, thing. Now, at 3:30 a.m., Jeremy calls his girlfriend, Julie, to say that something is wrong at the farm. She says, look, don't worry about it. It's probably not anything serious. Just go back to bed and don't worry about it.
Okay.
Now, at 3:33, Malcolm Bonnet, which is the civilian operator, called PC Saxby at Witham Police Station, and along with PC Miles and PC Hughes, they were instructed to visit Whitehouse Farm because of the first phone call from Neville Bamber to say that his daughter had gone berserk. Okay, so this is nothing to do with Jeremy phoning. This is initially on Neville Bamber's phone call, which we have documented evidence that this happened. Now, at 3:36 a.m., Jeremy called Chelmsford Police Station and spoke to PC West and told him what his dad had said on the phone. So PC West then calls PC Saxby within a minute of speaking to Jeremy. And PC Saxby was already just about to leave because he'd already been told to go already by the other person because of the phone call that he'd already had. So Jeremy left the cottage at 3:42 after being told by PC West to meet the police at the farm. Okay, so as far as they know, they've got a woman at the farm who's got a gun and has gone berserk. At 3:41, PC West tried to call Whitehouse Farm, but again, the line was engaged, like Jeremy had said. So PC West called BT, which is like British Telecom, head of our telecoms over here, at 3:42 and asked them to check the line. Now, the operator was a lady called Jean Rowe, and she said that she had listened in on the line because they can do that. And the phone was actually off the hook. There was no active call in place.
Okay.
So the phone wasn't engaged. It was off the hook.
Off the hook.
Okay. So we know now the police have had a phone call to say from Neville Bamber himself saying his daughter's gone berserk and she's taken the gun. We've got Jeremy Bamber saying that his dad's phoned him and said, get here quick. Your sister's gone mad and she's got the gun. And we know that the line it's not working. There's nobody on the line, but the line is inactive. So nobody can get through because it's not on the hook. Okay. We know that for fact. So at 3:45, the police passed Jeremy en route to Whitehouse Farm. They parked at the entrance to the farm, which is a lane just outside, and Jeremy pulled in at approximately 10 to 4. Okay, so the police got there just before he did. They had a brief discussion, then they headed towards the farm all together. At this time, a police log was started by somebody called PC Batchelor. I'll come back to PC Batchelor later. Remind me if I forget. The police did a recce of the farmhouse at 3:55 with Jeremy. So they go around the farmhouse and they check in to see where they can get in. Jeremy's explaining to them about the house, obviously because it's his family home. PC Miles said that he had seen movement in a bedroom window. He alerted the other officer that was with him, and both he and Jeremy said that there was movement in the upstairs bedroom window as well. And they all ducked down behind like a hedge so that they weren't seen by that person. Now, between 4 a.m. and 4:04, PC Hughes had requested firearms assistance. The firearms were then sent to Whitehouse Farm, and PC Hughes reported that all the lights in the house were on. Okay. Now, various other officers, a dog unit, there's lots of people that are requested to arrive at the farm. Firearms teams were escorted to the farm at 4:58 a.m. and 2 police vehicles arrived back with the firearms officers, and there was 9 firearms officers on board. Now, at 5:18, but I mean, bearing in mind, this was called in at 3-something. At 5:18, PC Miles was instructed to keep Jeremy away from the house. So they took him back to the police car in the lane. So he was kept away from the house. Now, according to reports, at 5:25, the firearms team were recorded as being in conversation with somebody from inside the farm.
What?
Okay. Jeremy was asked what they could say to Sheila to engage her in conversation. Okay. Now, at 5:34, the police asked Jeremy if there was anyone he would like to call. He said, could I please call my girlfriend? And a policeman drove Jeremy to a public phone so that he could phone his girlfriend. Now, the telephone line at Whitehouse Farm was checked again at 5:42 and was still engaged. Okay. Now, at 5:43, Jeremy returned to the scene and was waiting in the police car on the lane outside the farm. At 5:50, Essex police asked for the phone line at the farm to be connected to a 999 line so that they could listen in to see if there was anything going on. Now, obviously, before, the operator had already said it was off the hook. So they called again and the operator said, look, I can't tie up an emergency 999 line, but what I can do is I can connect it to an internal police phone and you can listen that way. So she did that. She connected them up and that line was constantly monitored to see if anybody tried to use the phone, tried to phone out. But evidence shows that connection must have ended shortly before 6:09 because a 999 emergency call was placed from inside the farmhouse.
Okay.
So someone has to be alive inside that house at 6:09 because a 999 call was placed from that house. Okay. By 6:20, a request for 2 ambulances was made from the scene, one for immediate use and one for standby purposes. At this point, they're still not in the house. So we're talking 6:42, 10 more firearms officers arrive at the scene and no one's been in the house yet. 6:44 and at 7 a.m, the lights that were previously on in the bedroom window were now off and the curtains were closed. So there's no police presence in this house and the lights are on in the bedroom window and now they're off. The curtains were open and now they're closed. Okay. No one from outside has been in. 2 ambulances arrive at 7:02 a.m. and more police officers arrive on the scene. At 7:08, the light in the main bedroom was back on again. So the lights in the house are going on and off, on and off. Now, 2 firearms officers reported that between 7 and 7:30, they had seen a rifle in the window of the upstairs bedroom adjacent to the master bedroom. And they were not stood together. They were in different areas on the scene, but both had reported to have seen this. Now, later on, they both say that they were mistaken and that it was a vacuum cleaner. But we're talking about 2 highly intelligent, highly qualified firearms officers. Okay, they've got a lot of experience. I was very surprised to hear that they mistook a rifle for a vacuum cleaner. Both of them separately.
At the same time, or roughly the same time?
Roughly the same time, but they weren't together. Now, at 7:54, the police smashed down the back door of the farmhouse with a sledgehammer. The door was locked from the inside with the key still in the lock. The light was on in the kitchen and the curtains were open. Now, they found 5 bodies with multiple gunshot wounds. Neville was downstairs in the kitchen and the rest of the family was upstairs. Now, we don't normally do trigger warnings, but if you are sensitive to that kind of thing, you might want to fast forward for the next couple of minutes, just because I'm going to describe to you what happens and how the bodies were found, and it's not very pleasant. So 25 shots in total had been fired, most of them at close range. Now, we don't know what order the family was killed because it's not actually known which way round it was. There was a telephone lying on one of the kitchen surfaces with its receiver off the hook. There were .22 shells next to that. The police said that chairs and stools were overturned. There was broken crockery. A sugar basin was broken. A ceiling light was broken, and it looked like blood on the floor. So there's obviously some kind of big struggle in the downstairs kitchen. Now, Neville was found in the kitchen dressed in pajamas. He was lying over an overturned chair next to the fireplace. He had been shot 8 times, 6 times to the head and face. And this was fired from when the rifle was a few inches from his skin. This is very close range. Now, the remaining shots to his body had occurred from at least 2 feet away, based on where the empty cartridges were. There were 3 in the kitchen and 1 on the stairs. Now, police had concluded that he'd been shot 4 times upstairs, but then managed to get himself downstairs where a struggle took place. And during this time, they believe he was hit several times with a rifle and shot again, but this final shot was fatal. And I'll talk a bit about how they know he was hit with the rifle a little bit later on. So there were 2 wounds to Neville's right side. There was 2 to the top of his head, which the pathologist said that would have resulted in unconsciousness. The left side of his lip was wounded. His jaw was fractured and his teeth, his neck and his larynx were all damaged. Now, the pathologist said that he would not have been able to engage in purposeful talk due to these injuries. There were gunshot wounds to Neville's left shoulder, his left elbow. He had black eyes and a broken nose. He had linear bruising to his cheeks and lacerations to his head. And he had linear type bruising to his right forearm, his left wrist, and 3 circular burn type marks to his back. Now, these believe of being consistent with having it like close to the skin. Okay. Now the linear marks.
Yeah, the shotgun. Yeah.
So the linear marks were consistent with Mr. Bamber having been struck with a long, blunt object, which they believe could possibly have been the gun itself.
Okay.
So June this is his wife, her body and clothing were heavily bloodstained. She was found in a nightdress with bare feet. Police believe she'd been sitting up during part of the attack in bed. And based on the pattern of blood on her clothes, they believe that she had been sat up during the first part of this, but she was found laying on the floor by the door of the master bedroom. She had been shot 7 times, 1 shot to her forehead between her eyes, and they believe that this was fired from under a foot away.
Oh, okay.
And the other shot to the right side of her head would have both caused death quickly. So either one of those 2 shots could have caused death very quickly. So they're not quite sure which one actually killed her. They were also shots to the right side of her lower neck, her right forearm, 2 injuries on the right side of her chest, and her right knee. So this isn't just a quick, she was asleep and somebody shot her, obviously. Now, unfortunately, the 2 boys were also found in their beds in their own bedroom, which was formerly Sheila's bedroom when she was growing up. They appeared to have been shot whilst in bed. Daniel had been shot 5 times in the back of the head, and 4 of those times the gun had been held within a foot of his head.
Oh, okay.
Now, Nicholas had been shot 3 times, all close contact shots. Now, Sheila herself, Sheila was found on the floor of the master bedroom with her mum. She was in her nightdress as well. She had bare feet. She had 2 bullet wounds under her chin. One of them was on her throat. And the pathologist, Peter Van Veneses, said that the lower of the injuries had occurred from 3 inches away. The higher one was a contact injury. So the one that was under her chin was contact. The one on her throat was from about 3 inches away.
Okay.
The lower injury could have killed her, but not necessarily straight away. Now, Veneses testified that it would be possible for a person with an injury, like the first one to her lower neck, to be able to stand up and walk around.
Yeah. Okay.
But the lack of blood on her nightdress suggested to him that this wasn't the case. He believed that the lower of her injuries had happened first because it had caused bleeding inside the neck. And then the court heard that if immediately fatal wound had happened first, there would be no bleeding to the second wound. So they know which way around those 2 happened. Yeah. Okay. This
that makes sense.
Quite important. The pattern of bloodstains on her nightdress suggested she had been sitting up when she received both injuries.
Wait, so sitting up, but there's no indication she was walking around. So she was sitting up in the location that she was found?
Well,
is that how I'm supposed to take it?
Well, I don't know, because it seems that if she had the first shot and she could still walk around, obviously she didn't die from the first wound. The second wound was a contact one under her chin and the bullet went through her brain. So that one would have definitely killed her quicker than the first one would have done. Now, there was blood and urine samples taken from Sheila, and she had taken a haloperidol. And several days earlier, she had also used cannabis. There were no marks on her body that suggested struggle. The firearms officer who saw her first said that her feet and her hands were clean. Her fingernails were manicured, not broken. Her fingertips were free of blood, no dirt, no powder. There was no trace of lead dust either on her hands. The rifle magazine would have needed to have been loaded at least twice during the killings because of these. The magazines only took 10. Do you remember I told you before?
Yeah.
And obviously there's at least 25 shots in this.
Yeah. And you would have to manually load the magazine.
Yes. And when you do this, there's lubricant from the bullets.
Yeah.
And this would have been left on her hands had she have done this. Okay. Now, a senior crimes officer, a guy called Detective Constable Hammersley, said that there were bloodstains on the back of her right hand, but other than that, her hands were clean. There was no blood on Sheila's feet, no other debris on her feet, such as the sugar that was found on the downstairs floor after that sugar pot was broken. Low traces of lead were found on her hands and forehead at the post-mortem, but the levels were consistent with the everyday handling of things around the house, so not necessarily the gun. Now, a forensic scientist called Brian Elliott testified that if Sheila had loaded 18 cartridges into a magazine, he would have expected to have seen more lead on her hands.
Yeah. Okay.
So the blood on her night dress was also consistent with being her own. No trace of firearms discharge residue was on it. And given that she was wearing just a night dress, how would she have carried those cartridges and the gun with her and shot a shotgun or a rifle?
So to me, the first thing that stands out is that the crime scene that we're seeing does not match with the logs and the reports from the police.
Yes. Good spot, Batman.
Huh. Okay.
Now, the rifle did not have a silencer or any sights attached to it, and it was lying on her body, pointing up at her neck. June's Bible was on the floor to the right-hand side of Sheila, and it was normally kept in a bedside cupboard. June's fingerprints were on the Bible, as were others that couldn't be identified, including one made by a child.
Okay.
Now, a week later, there was an inquest. This was held on the 14th of August, 1985, and the police suggested that their version of events was the correct version of events and that it was a murder-suicide, that Sheila killed her family and then killed herself.
Is that a quick turnaround for an inquest?
Yeah, it's very quick. A week later, I think it's very, very quick. But the police had made up their mind of what they believed happened. It was treated as a this is what's happened. Let's get on with it kind of thing.
Okay.
So the bodies were released. Neville, June, and Sheila were all cremated, and the boys were buried. Following the funeral, Detective Chief Inspector Thomas Jones, who's the deputy head of CID, was so sure that Sheila had killed her family that he had ordered Jeremy's cousins out of his office when they asked him to consider why they had done it so quickly and whether Jeremy could have actually set this whole thing up.
Why?
Yeah.
Where does this come from?
You would wonder that, wouldn't you? Why would the cousins go to the police and suggest that Jeremy was to blame for this? What evidence have they got?
Yeah.
Let's see if there's a motive for them going to the police to try and get rid of Jeremy. And let's see if you spot it. Okay?
Okay.
Now they were...
okay, let me... hold on. Before we get into that, let me ask you one other question, which I thought of just now.
Okay.
You said the bodies, the bodies were cremated except for the boys.
Yeah, the two boys were buried.
Let's go back to what we know about June being very religious.
Yeah.
Would June... I don't see June being a person that would be like, I want to be cremated.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure on religion stuff. So I'm not really sure whether Christians want to be buried more than, cremated. I'm not sure. I don't know whether they believe that or not. I think the boys, because obviously the boy's dad was still alive, so he would probably have a say on what he wanted to happen.
Because wouldn't that be like desecrating a body into?
I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not really up on the old faiths, so I'm not really sure on that one. Well, I can look that up and we'll have a look at that.
Now, I'm trying to think to myself now that is there anything specific that that police would lose with these bodies being cremated? Well,
to me, it's very quickly. They were released very fast, and they were cremated, and then that's it. Now, obviously, you've got no evidence left on them. You can't go and dig up cremated remains and put them all back together, can you? So
yeah,
it's convenient to have them all cremated.
That's very convenient.
Now, obviously, Jeremy is the only one left of this family, so he's now the police believe obviously he's victim in this, and that she's gone berserk and has killed her kids, killed her mum, killed her dad, killed herself. So Jeremy at the moment is the one that they're very sad about. Somebody went out then and told Jeremy what had happened, offered him some whiskey. He had some whiskey, obviously was in shock. Now, following the funeral, I said to you that they had Jeremy Bamber's cousins had gone into the police and said that he had done this. Now, they reported that he had acted very strangely at the funeral. They said that he sobbed during the funeral service for his parents and his sister, and at one point seemed to buckle at the knees and was supported by his girlfriend, but that later at the wake he was smiling and joking. Well, I've been to wakes and I've smiled and joked and talked about the person who's died and been happy at the wake, even though at the funeral I was crying. So I don't necessarily think that was a strange thing.
Yeah.
Because, everybody reacts to grief different ways. Shortly after
Exactly.
this is a bit strange. Shortly after the funerals, Jeremy went to Amsterdam with Julie and a friend, where he bought a large quantity of cannabis. Okay. He also began selling his family belongings. Julie's mother was offered June's car. An ad was placed in the local newspaper, selling off Neville's car, because obviously Jeremy's not going to need it. Okay. So that's one of those things that happens. Unfortunately, you have to go through everybody's possessions. There's stuff that you're not going to want to keep. There's stuff that you're going to need to get rid of. You don't need 3 cars.
Yeah.
So
no, you don't.
he's got his own car. So he's selling them off. Now, because the police believed that it was... Because the police believed that it was...
Say,
go on.
But no, just real quick. I was just going to say, you got to also imagine. So Jeremy is financially, embedded or attached to Neville, right? So he's getting paid by Neville. That's where his monthly income's coming from. They're gone, so he has to find a way to live.
That's right.
Okay, so yeah, so sell what you can so that you can continue.
You can't keep everything, can you? There's no reason for you to have 3 vehicles, 4. No. 3 vehicles would be his mum and his dad's. He's not going to need all that.
There's nothing abnormal about selling off the your parents' stuff after they pass away.
No. Now because the police were so certain it was a murder-suicide, the murder scene wasn't secured and it wasn't searched thoroughly. The evidence wasn't recorded or preserved, and within a couple of days, police had burned the blood-stained bedding and the carpets, apparently to spare Jeremy's feelings. Because obviously Jeremy was going to be going back in the house, and so the police got rid of it all so that when he went back in, there wasn't blood everywhere and there wasn't, stuff to upset.
Okay, here's the thing. It's still a crime scene, so shouldn't you be securing items from a crime scene? Even if it is murder, suicide?
Yeah.
And if it's though it's not a active crime scene now, or it's not an active case, wouldn't you still want to collect that stuff? Okay, sure, you might not want to keep a whole bed in storage, but can't you cut out the pieces of the bed that you need? And going and just burning stuff right away just does not seem
I find that really weird
to me.
No, I find that really strange that they would do that. Now, also, the scene of crimes officer moved the murder weapon without wearing any gloves.
Oh, fantastic.
It wasn't examined for fingerprints until weeks after the killings. And
good.
3 days after the killings, Jeremy and the extended family, the cousins, were given the keys to the house. So it's just literally 3 days after they were allowed back in to do what they want.
So they ruled it a murder-suicide without even knowing if Sheila had actually ever touched that gun.
Yes. Because the gun wasn't tested for fingerprints until weeks after the murder, yet they were given keys to go back 3 days after the murders.
Fantastic.
Now, also, the police didn't find the silencer for the rifle in the cupboard. One of Jeremy's cousins found it on the 10th of August. And this silencer, when it was examined, appeared to have flecks of red paint and blood on the silencer. That was found by the cousin in the cupboard, okay? Now, it was taken to another one of the cousins' homes, and the police then took a further 3 days to collect it. A few days after that, the cousins found a scratch on the red mantelpiece that the prosecution said was caused by the silencer during a struggle for the gun, and that accounted for the fleck of red paint in the silencer. The Bible found near Sheila. Now, this is strange because the Bible found near Sheila, in some reports, it says that it was fingerprinted, and there was June's fingerprints, Sheila's fingerprints, and that of a child, and then an unknown fingerprint. But then in other reports, it says that the Bible wasn't examined at all, and that no one examined it.
You know what? I don't think anyone examined it because they didn't examine anything else, and they ruled it murder-suicide right away. So
there was also
why would they?
A hacksaw blade that was found outside the house that lay in the garden for months, that was found months after. Officers didn't take accurate notes, and the officers that dealt with Jeremy wrote down their statements weeks after this had all occurred. Jeremy's clothes weren't examined until a month after the murders. And 10 years later, all of the blood samples and the evidence that were taken were destroyed.
I have so many questions.
I know. Now, you said about the butt of the rifle having fingerprints on it. Now, a print from Sheila's right ring finger was found on the right side of the butt of the rifle, which was pointing downwards. A print from Jeremy's right forefinger was on the end of the barrel, above the stock, and this was pointing across the gun. But obviously, he had handled that gun earlier. To go and shoot the rabbits. And there were 3 other prints that couldn't be identified on that rifle.
Okay.
So we talked about possible motives for this, okay? Now, the inheritance issues with the immediate and extended family do provide a motive, okay? And they add a little bit more confusion to this case. Now, the Bamber's company was called N&J Bamber Limited, okay? It was worth £400,000 in 1985. Which is over £1 million in 2016. In their wills, June left 230,000, and then Neville left 380,000. During the trial, the court heard that the Bambers had left their estate to Jeremy and Sheila to be just divided equally between them. And in addition to this, in Neville's will, it said that to inherit his part of the inheritance, Jeremy had to be working on the farm at the time of his father's death.
Oh.
Why that's significant to Neville, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But apparently he had to be working on the farm in order to get his inheritance.
Okay.
But
Sheila didn't have any.
There was nothing. No, there was no requirements for Sheila as to what was going on with her getting her inheritance. Now, the court also heard from the mother of Jeremy's girlfriend that he had been saying June wanted to change her will to bypass him and Sheila and leave the whole estate to the kids, to the twins.
What? Okay.
Apparently, that's what she was saying. Now, also,
this is also the woman that's like, hey, let's put them up into foster care.
Yeah.
But I want to give all my money to them.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Okay. Now, obviously, their estate included land, buildings, and, the farm, but also it included buildings occupied by Jeremy's cousins, I should say, who were made aware after the murders that Jeremy intended to sell those buildings that they lived in. So they would intentionally, they would be homeless eventually.
Okay.
All right.
Oh.
Now, in the case of all this being left to just Jeremy, if Jeremy was convicted of murdering them, the whole estate passes to the cousins and the cousins' family. It would bypass Jeremy because obviously he's the only one left. It would go to the next set of family. So it would go to the cousins and their cousins' family.
Okay. This is very, very, very confusing.
Very, very, very confusing. But that just gives you a little idea of a motive possibly for the cousins, in that if Jeremy was out of the picture, they would inherit the Bamber's estate. And remember, it was Jeremy's cousin that found the silencer in the cupboard with the blood on it and with the specks on it.
And who took it from the residence.
Yes.
And it was not recovered by police until days later.
Yes. And the cousins are the people that went to the police and told the police that Jeremy had set all this up and it wasn't a murder-suicide.
Okay. So they could have caused the damage and got the red flick of paint on the silencer themselves.
Potentially they could have done because they had keys to the property.
But and there's also, you said there was indication of blood on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do we know whose blood that is?
I believe from reports that I've read that it is Neville's and Sheila's.
Okay.
So
that they would not been able to do themselves.
They went into the property 3 days after the murders.
Was there still blood around?
Was there still blood around on the kitchen floor?
Oh, I don't know.
No. So the police had got rid of all the
Interesting.
bedding, but that's a possibility that they could have got into the property. Okay. Now, on the 7th of September, 1985, a month after the murders, Julie Mugford, who is Jeremy's girlfriend, changed her statement to police, now alleging that Jeremy had been planning to kill his family. And as a result of this statement, Jeremy was arrested the following day.
Because she changed her statement.
Because she's changed her statement. And that brings us to the end of episode 1 of this case.
I have so many questions.
There are so many questions.
Oh my goodness.
This case is just like a sieve. There are so many holes in this case. It's unbelievable. And I've got so much more for you to come. So much more to come.
All right. Okay. I will hold off on giving you my thoughts until we finish this up. But yeah, I have so many. Like, I feel like my thoughts and what I think happened have already changed like 2 or 3 times.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just in the past hour.
I know. And this has happened to me multiple times in this case. I'm like, he did it, he didn't, he did it, he didn't. Did he do it? Did somebody else do it? Oh my God. You know?
Yeah. I am absolutely convinced that we would not be sitting here talking about this case now, and we wouldn't be getting into any sort of debate about what happened if only the police did a proper investigation from the beginning.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, I think, could have been resolved, and we could have. There'd be no questions about it. It would be, this is what we found. This is what we know. This is what the evidence points to.
And there's more.
It sounds to me that they're not using. Yeah. Oh yeah. So far, it doesn't seem like they're using evidence.
No.
To make a decision that it was murder.
No.
They're looking at.
Right.
They're looking at the crime scene.
Yeah, and made their mind up.
They're hearing. They made their mind up. They're hearing about the history from Jeremy, and they made their mind up. That's it.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame them.
No.
I don't blame them for that being their first thought.
No.
What I do blame them is them going and saying, "Okay, that's it."
Yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously the following actions from that, okay, that's it, has then resulted in pieces of evidence that could be looked at again, not being able to be looked at again.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So
it's a shit show. It's a shit show right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. It's a complete shit show. All right.
All right. So we'll be back.
Well, thank you for that.
No problem. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. We're going to go back tomorrow with a new one.
Yeah, let's go back tomorrow.
All right. So you have another episode tomorrow where I'll go through Julie's statement. I'll also go through the prosecution's ideas of what happened, and also the defense's ideas of what happened and what's happening now with this.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And I will do, after tomorrow's episode, a little dumb criminal for you. How about that?
I love that. All right. We'll see you later on. Thank you for listening. For now, be nice.
And bye.